The reviews are in, and we're going to tell you what they are. He's Todd Vandenberg. I'm Rob Steele. We've got movies, we've got news, and we're going to pass that along. Kind of, like a contagion or something.
Yes, never mind.
Actually, speaking of contagions, let's go ahead and get this brief story out of the way. There's a guy who lives in this big White House in Washington, D.C., who is very upset about a scene of his in Home Alone 2 being cut from the Canadian broadcast of Home Alone 2. And you know what? Get over it. It was cut for time 7 years ago when they started airing it that way. But now he's upset about it because it has to do with his impeachment. No. I would like to point out, however, that Donald Trump is, in fact, the first cast member of Home Alone 2 to be impeached.
It's just pretty cool news.
It is. I think that's very good news.
You should be proud.
Moving on to, that's a Christmas movie, allegedly. I don't get how Christmas factors into the whole thing, other than that's why the family's out of town, which leads me to toys. And I came across a new series of toys just before Christmas.
Yeesh.
I found them at my local Target. If you really want to find these, I found action figures for Happy Days and Cheers. I don't quite get this either. I was very close to buying Chachi and Norm just to sit them next to each other, but didn't.
I think that's a good decision. I don't think they would get on very well. You should have bought them, but yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking Norm would be more of an in-action figure.
I think you're right. Norm would definitely be an action figure. Although I do think his one action in that scenario would be to slap the taste out of Chachi's mouth, like every once in a while, just because. Wow, Chachi.
Yeah. Well, that's about I think that was all that was left. I think everybody else got.
Gee, I wonder why. That would be a great show.
I forgot Rhea Perlman's name on Cheers, but I think her figure was gone even.
Well, it should be, because she's super cool. That would be a great subject for a show. It was like worst characters ever. Chachi wouldn't be the lead, but Chachi's on it anyway.
I'll make a note.
And burn it. Anyway.
But, speaking of action figures, that leads us into a bit of Star Wars news. Out of the forthcoming Obi-Wan Kenobi TV series, it was announced, and I apologize in advance for this, that Jar Jar Binks may be showing up. I'll make it worse. He's supposed to have a beard. I'm not entirely sure how his species is supposed to get a beard, but, there we are. Jar Jar beard.
Yes.
And actually, I got to throw this in. I'm kind of tired of this one thing for Star Wars that's happened in this last movie. The announcement of all the cameos. Oh, you didn't notice this person was in this, and this person was here, and this person was there. And apparently there was a thing where, let's see, what were the names here? Jason Sudeikis and Adam Pally. You'll never guess where they were in Star Wars. I'm like, well, yeah, I don't even know who the hell they are. So, of course, I'm not going to figure out that, that's who those two people were in Star Wars. I don't know who the hell they are on Earth.
No, I know who Jason is, and I don't care. I don't care about any of the cameo stuff like, which random stormtrooper? It's like, don't care.
That one was Daniel Craig. Yeah,
exactly.
He's in a stormtrooper outfit. You can't tell.
Yeah,
you made that up.
He's the stormtrooper that Rey's like forces, uses her wiki force powers and makes him let her go. It's like, okay, cool. It's fun for the people who are in it. Definitely, that would be cool. Yeah. But I don't care about that.
If you're sitting next to them and they go, "That one's me," and you go, "Really? Oh, okay."
Yeah, exactly.
Other than that, I can't be bothered to care. Yep. And yes, I do. I'm aware of the name of Jason Sudeikis. Adam Pally, not a clue.
Concur.
Sorry?
I concur. No idea. And don't care.
I thought you said Beaker. I'm like, how the hell can he play Beaker?
No, that would be great if he was Beaker. Now, Beaker showing up in Star Wars.
See, that would be a cameo I'd be more interested in.
Totally. Yeah. I'm down with that.
While we're at Disney, let's go on to something. You paid a bit more attention to this than I did. Doctor Strange and what is it? The mystical, magical whirlwind tour, or whatever they're calling the next movie.
Yes, Doctor Strange and the Magical Mystery Tour, the madness of the multiverse, multiverse madness. They had a little bit of madness in that they have parted ways with the director of Doctor Strange 2, which is not the best news because he's the director of the first Doctor Strange, which is an excellent movie of its ilk, of its type. So that's not the best news ever, to be sure, especially since not only did he direct it, but he wrote it. And the usual creative differences issue has been cited. So one would have to think that not having any insider info, and it might be out there, but it's not that big a deal. The news is just that they've parted ways. You would think that probably he wanted to stick more to a Doctor Strange-centric vision, because he wrote the first one and directed it. Not that it's his character, but...
Vision? You mean Vision's in this too? Sorry.
And maybe that's the issue, because Scarlet Witch is in the movie, and there is some concern... Well, there's no concern. It's just that it's obviously setting the stage for the multiverse and all these possible different timelines. So could be that he was not that thrilled with that direction. Apparently he wasn't, since they parted ways over creative differences. And there have been some way crazy overreactions, like, oh my God, Phase 4's in trouble. Look what happened. It's like, yeah, they have done this before, parted ways with directors, like a couple of times. So I wouldn't say that the Marvel machine is in trouble. I mean, granted, the first time I can recall was Thor: The Dark World, and that movie could have been better. It's not bad by any means, but it's not one of their strongest entries. So maybe they should have stayed with Patty Jenkins, who did deliver the first damn DC movie in a long time, which was worth anything, Wonder Woman. So that's a possibility. And they also switched off directors before too. So it will be fine.
I want to say Taika Waititi was not the first to do Thor 3, and that turned out great.
It did turn out great. Edgar Wright was tabbed to do Ant-Man. And God knows, the guy who did Shaun of the Dead, I'd love to see what he was going to do with Ant-Man. But, same thing, creative differences. Ant-Man turned out to be pretty damn good. So,
yeah.
Again, this hardly means, oh my God, they're in trouble. It just means that Scott Derrickson saw one vision of it. Kevin Feige, because Kevin Feige rules that universe for sure, saw a different vision, and yeah, maybe literally saw a different vision. So we'll find out.
It'll be fine. Don't panic.
Yeah, it will be wonderful, and it'll be amazing, because like Doctor Strange is a really cool movie. Really, really love it, especially the fact that they basically brought Steve Ditko's crazy backgrounds to life. Awesome job. But he's not the only person who's directed a good Marvel movie. So it will be just fine, true believers. Just fine.
And that's actually, it's not the only Marvel movie that's coming out soon. Well, duh. But one that's unexpected and showing up anyway. The New Mutants movie. It's actually coming out this time. Again, it's coming out in April, like it was supposed to 2 years ago when they finished filming it.
Yes.
They released a new trailer.
They did.
And I got to say this, it doesn't look that bad.
I agree.
When Fox makes an X-Men movie, they don't look bad. They've never looked bad.
True, they don't.
It's a shame they had very little to do with the books they came from. The way that they look in this trailer, Sam, his powers don't look right to me. I don't get that. I do like the fact that he does have the broken arm like he did when he first showed up in the books, which somehow he broke his arm while being invulnerable. I'm sorry, how? But that's okay. Ilyana looks really good in this movie. And I'm going to call that she's the catalyst for the storyline, because this is a horror movie and her character's origins are actually from hell. So, that could be a thing. But then again, that would have required someone at Fox who produced this movie to have actually read the books, which would be a first for an X-Men related movie.
It would be. I was very impressed with this trailer. I've seen some earlier trailers and was like, but this actually does the job of a trailer. It makes me want to see the film. I think they spent most of those 2 years not only doing reshoots, but doing a lot of editing, because... I
think it was a lot of editing. I think they said that they never even got around to doing the reshoots. So that the characters they were going to add in, they didn't.
And you never can tell from a trailer. But this actually looks like a good, cohesive film, which, oh my God, that's a switch for what used to be, at least, be a Fox X-Men property, like you said. Yeah. So, and if it isn't,
Oh, darn.
Not exactly the crime of making a bad Batman Superman movie. So, there's my dig at DC. I'm looking forward to it. Like you said, the trailer looks good. Looks very suspenseful. Definitely looks like a horror movie, which that definitely fits in with Marvel's history of doing different genre pictures within the big tent of superhero movies.
Well, I think that's one of the great things about superhero movies is they can be whatever you need them to be. If you need a love story, then you can make a love story using these characters, or a horror story, or whatever.
Exactly.
Which is cool. This one just happens to be a horror story.
Which makes them cinema. How about that? Anyway.
Uh-oh.
That's all I'm saying.
But yeah, so this one's supposed to be the big horror story, or at least that and Doctor Strange is both supposed to have horror aspects to them. Kind of like that thing you watched this week, or
a little bit
recently. I don't know if you watched all of it this week, because you can take a mini series and stretch it out a while.
Yeah, this is a mini series. We're talking about Dracula, which is a BBC One production, which is on Netflix along with BBC. As a mini series, it's 3 hour-and-a-half long episodes, so 4.5 hours in all.
Oh, so a season of Sherlock.
A season of Sherlock. Imagine that coming from the BBC. One of the writers, Donald Moffat, kind of known for his BBC stuff, like things like Doctor Who. So, the story of Dracula. You probably know about the story of Dracula. This makes some interesting changes, but this is basically the story of Dracula. So, 3 episodes. First part, Jonathan Harker goes to meet Dracula in his weird land of 1897 in Wallachia. So he's in this weird Eastern European country, meets Dracula. Dracula's this incredibly old dude. Dracula gradually feeds on him. Harker figures out he ain't getting out of there. He was supposed to just show up, have Dracula sign some papers, skedaddle back to England in a day. Didn't happen. So it's this battle between Harker and Dracula. And it's not much of a battle because it never is. But the framing is great because they open this story. Harker looks awful. He looks like he's had about 19 different diseases. None of them got treated. And he is in a convent being taken care of by a couple of nuns. One in particular, Sister Agatha. She's taking the lead on his care. And she's interviewing him and asking him about what happened. And he's written it all out, which is like Bram Stoker's original narrative, obviously. And she says, no, you left a lot out, so tell me more. So Harker relates the story of what happened to him in the castle. So at the end of the first episode, there's a really cool reveal, which I didn't really expect. I mean, the signs were there, and I'm sure a lot of people are saying, well, duh, how could you miss it? Fine, whatever. But very nice. There's a couple of interesting reveals, actually, as to who Sister Agatha is in the grand scheme of things. And she was a character in the original novel. I know she doesn't show up in, I can't recall her in any of the adaptations, but she's in the novel. So quit your bitching. And just so there's a nice resolution to that first episode. It's extremely well done. And before I go any further, I want to mention Dolly Wells plays Agatha. She's excellent. She's wonderful. She's amazing. A really powerful character. And Claes Bang, and that's probably Bang, he's Danish. He plays Dracula. He is phenomenally good. Dracula is supposed to be this magnetic, charming, sophisticated character who's not exactly a nice person. Man, does he ever pull this off. Excellent. Easily among the best who've ever done it. And Christopher Lee, terrific Dracula. Gary Oldman only did it once, but terrific job. Claes is right up there with them. Just a great interpretation. He's charming, but you can tell he's really freaking dangerous. And all the time, not just like when he decides to bite someone in their throat. So, first episode, really, really cool. Second episode, and this is one that we don't really see much of in the movies. I mean, it was in Bram Stoker's Dracula, which Coppola did, the one with Gary Oldman. It's the Voyage of the Demeter, or the Demeter, the ship that Dracula took to get to England. The second episode is nothing but that voyage. So it pays a lot more attention to that. And it's a microcosm, of course, of Dracula's battle against the world and blah, blah, blah. And it delves more into the lore of Dracula, and it deals really in really interesting ways with all the legends of Dracula. And, of course, People are getting picked off one by one. If that's a spoiler,
how could you have missed that?
Yeah, sorry to blow 120 years of pop culture for you. So my apologies. But of course, no one realizes that, Dracula's doing it. They just know bad things are happening.
Maybe it's Steve.
Yeah, maybe it is Steve. So more characters are introduced that are important to the story on this voyage. And I'll give you a spoiler alert. Sister Agatha is on board the ship. So there you go. Sorry about that. So as soon as you heard the word spoiler alert, stop listening for 20 seconds. Not that you can do that because this is after the fact. Anyway, back to the topic. So
pause,
again,
go back. Anyway.
Another nicely self-contained story. This would be a cool movie all on its own. The first part would have been a great movie all on its own. Second part, same thing. Works on its own. Third part, hey, Dracula shows up in England because Dracula always shows up in England. So again, 120-year-old spoiler alert. My apologies. But there are some interesting changes to this storyline, and I'll just say that much for that. But this is where we get the introduction of Lucy. So Lucy, very important character in the story in virtually all the incarnations. She's important here. A few new characters to the storyline, but they're not new to the general tale. They just haven't been introduced yet. So new characters come into play here once he gets to England. And the way it plays with the story, I'll just say this: IMDb has great reviews for episode 1, has great reviews for episode 2. Reviews for episode 3 are really not that solid. It drops down to, let's see, I believe it was 7.4. Episode 1, 8.1 out of 10. That's pretty damn solid. Episode 2, 7.7. Again, really nice. Episode 3, 5.1. So a lot of people didn't like the changes they made to the storyline and the story of Dracula. I thought it was great. I really loved the changes. It makes perfect sense. As one reviewer said who really likes it, and I can't even say that for spoiler lane, but it makes sense. It just makes sense in the context of the overall story and the way it was originally told. I'll put it that way. So, of course, there's the final battle between Dracula and his adversaries, and it goes in some very interesting directions that I didn't expect. I'm not sure that there couldn't have been a better ending, but I do like the ending. So it's not like, oh, wow, that's 4.5 hours down the drain. No, I thought it was really, really well done. But again, the acting, the look of the film, the set pieces, as in little individual happenings, as long as the sets are just terrific. But the standouts, everyone is really good. But the standout, as far as the actors, Claes Bang as the Count, absolutely terrific. Excuse me. And Dolly Wells as Sister Agatha, awesome. I mean, it isn't that often that you see someone match up against Dracula and it's believable. Typically, it seems like it takes an entire team to go up against him. Even in, well, the Christopher Lee ones where Cushing plays Van Helsing. Yeah, okay. And Van Helsing is in this, so it's not like Van Helsing doesn't show up. Van Helsing is very important, et cetera, et cetera. But you'll just have to watch it to see what goes on with Van Helsing. But she's a great, great adversary for Dracula. By far one of the best to hold her own. Again, when Sister Agatha's in the picture. So anyway, Dracula, highly, highly recommended. 4.5 hours of your life. Probably could not be better spent unless you were, I don't know, recovering from mental herpes. Throwback. Anyway, no, watch Dracula. Very, very good stuff.
So, okay, is that better than The Irishman? Which I assume is of the same length of time.
I was a little, it is about almost exactly the same length of time. I was a little harsh maybe on The Irishman. It's not that it's bad. It's really good. But like I said, he's gone over that territory before. And there's a cool video on YouTube of some guys who work on VFX, and they de-aged the characters of The Irishman far better than they were de-aged in The Irishman.
Oops.
Which is pretty sad. That was one of the problems I had with The Irishman, actually, is the de-aging they de-aged them, but not enough. And you can just see the job that these VFX guys, and granted, they only did like 2.5 minutes. Of course, it only took them a week to do it. So yeah, it's frustrating in that, and that's one of the problems, is you're supposed to believe De Niro and Pesci are like late 20s, early 30s. They look like they're in their 50s and have some problems with their skin. That's an issue.
Maybe it's Maybelline.
Yeah, that's an issue. So interesting that a guy who calls out comic book hero movies for being amusement park rides instead of films didn't manage to get one of the primary things right about what makes films work, is the suspension of disbelief. It's like, maybe you should have contacted someone at Marvel and gotten some help on that, dude.
Maybe.
Anyway, Irishman is a good movie, no doubt, but it's not a great movie. And when you're Martin Scorsese, I know those are high expectations, but everything should be great. Everything should be The Freaking Departed or Taxi Driver or Raging Bull. It's just more than half of his movies are great movies. I mean, that's an incredible record. Irishman's not part of it. Anyway, Dracula, very, very good stuff. You should totally watch Dracula.
See, this week, I'm actually going to do 2 movies.
Woo!
But they're the same movie, but they're different movies. But it'll make sense in a minute. I have a story to go with it first.
Yay.
This past Friday, my parents were in town. We were doing a belated holiday thing because, in case you haven't heard me hacking throughout the show, or I've been sick, so we didn't get to see my family over the holidays. They came down and visited. And while we were waiting for my wife to show up at the restaurant, we went next door to a music store where they sell instruments. Unfortunately, there's no such thing as a place where you can buy CDs and records anymore. But as we walked in, my mom looked at this drum set and said, "You know what? We should have bought you a drum set when you were younger because you really wanted to play the drums." And I said, I told you that when I was 11. It's a bit late now, but that was kind of a foreshadowing thing for later because she kept obsessing over the drums, and I'm not sure why, and neither is she. Later, we went to the Chinese restaurant next door, which, if you're ever in Augusta, Formosa's has got some incredible food. Just thought I'd pass that along, and they can give me coupons next time I go.
They won't.
They won't. It's worth a try. We could use sponsors. Anyway, so we have this magnificent food, and we get the fortune cookie at the end of it because it's Americanized Chinese food. My fortune cookie said, "You will have excellent news by the end of the night." I thought that meant something very different. It didn't, because about 10 minutes later, one of my daughters is on her phone and she says, "Uh-oh." And I'm like, "What? Did you drop the phone and crack the screen again?" "No, but you're not going to like this." And she hands me her phone, and it's breaking news headline: Rush announces that Neil Peart has died. That's not the excellent news I wanted.
Right.
Because, if you've heard the show before, you know that I am a big fan of Rush. Neil Peart being the lyricist and drummer. See, that's where the foreshadowing comes in. Very much not happy with that. Still kind of a bit, damn it, I guess there's not going to be a new album.
Right.
But a couple years ago, and yes, I am going back about almost 10 for one of these, there have been 2 Rush documentaries. The first one was Beyond the Lighted Stage, which is on Netflix, and the newer one, Time Stands Still, which is available on Amazon Prime. Actually, both of them are also on iTunes, and DVD and Blu-ray. Go figure. But I wanted to take a look at both of those because Neil is very much in the news this week. Unfortunately, not the way we want him in the news. But these 2 documentaries, basically, like I said, they're kind of the same movie, and yet they're kind of not. Both of them take a look at the history of the band, which, Rush, their first album came out in 1974. But that, of course, means they were around quite a bit before that, because we formed a band and it instantly got a record deal. That doesn't happen. So, it starts way back in the 60s and goes through the history of the band, which has some really cool stuff to it. And both Beyond the Lighted Stage and Time Stands Still do have the same general idea, like all the albums, funny enough, came out in the same order. Who knew? But they still have different stories for all of them and different ways of telling them, even though it's the band themselves telling the stories. I think the main differences between the 2, Beyond the Lighted Stage has a lot more interview bits with people who are not in the band but were influenced by the band, like Billy Corgan from the Smashing Pumpkins, Dave Mustaine from Megadeth. Jack Black shows up for a while. I'm not sure why, but there he is. Sorry, I have to poke Jack Black with a stick every so often. Actually, the first voice you hear in this is Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails, which when I first heard it, I was like, that sounds like Trent. Why is it? Oh my God, it is Trent. That's cool. So it's how Rush influenced all these other people, which is a great thing, I think. And why I think Beyond the Lighted Stage is a bit more upbeat and has a happier ending. It does end before they come out with Clockwork Angels, which was their last studio album. So there's still this sense of there's going to be more, stay tuned. Unlike Time Stands Still, which focuses more on the last show of the last tour, where you're I mean, it's still a lot of the same stuff, just told slightly. They're both worth watching. So I'm going to go with that. But Time Stands Still definitely has more of a sense of finality to it, a sense of, where Beyond the Lighted Stage was, there's more, stay tuned. This one is more Time Stands Still is more nope, this is where it's going to end. And actually, the way they did end was excellent. I'm not going to tell you how. You can watch it yourself and go, that is kind of sad. But, in a good, sad kind of way, if it'll make sense when you watch it.
Totally makes sense.
But those both came to mind, and Time Stands Still actually sits a little bit better with me now, knowing that unfortunately there is not going to be more forthcoming. So I kind of get that. And it is possible that they knew something was this wrong with Neil. He died of a brain cancer that I can't pronounce, and I'm not going to try to. It's possible that he had this during the last tour and they knew this, and that's why they made it sound like it was going to be a final thing. Either way, I'm not real sure if that's actually what happened or not, but that's kind of the way, if that's actually what happened, you get the feeling that that's the way they wanted to end things. And that's fine. I'm still not happy with the way it ended because I didn't want them to end, but there we go. Not much I can do about that. Isn't this the most upbeat thing to end the first show of the year with?
It is. This is awesome. It makes me feel all giggly inside.
It's still... I mean, both of them are still really good movies.
It doesn't have to be upbeat. I mean, that's a sad thing that's happened for his family, for his friends, for his literally millions of fans.
Yeah.
So it's part of life. So, and it's when things are even more personal, it's like, the advice is always don't dwell on the fact that that person's gone. Celebrate who they were while they were here. And exactly. I can't think of a better way than to watch a couple of excellent documentaries about Rush. So I don't think it's down at all.
And of course, all of the albums are still available on iTunes and Amazon and everywhere else.
When are we going to get to the point when you walk into a record store and you just say, "Boy, I really would like I would like that old studio album of all B-sides from Rush," and it gets downloaded to your phone just because you said it. Of course,
I'd like that.
You wouldn't have to be at the record store. You just have to look at your computer and say that, which, come to think of it, you can do. So I guess I'll shut up now.
I've actually got, I think, all the B-sides, but that's just me.
So
the collector thing.
The collector thing, yeah. Movies and music are better things to hoard than animals. So I guess you're okay.
I'll agree. Especially since I'm allergic to most animals and I don't.
You could go with more snakes. You could hoard snakes.
Yeah, we've got the one. We get to feed her 3 mice tonight. So yay! Because she's growing. It's a shame her head is still so incredibly small.
Snakes are weird that way, aren't they?
I am so off subject at this point.
Although they get big, their heads get big when it's time to eat, though. That's for damn sure.
That's terrifying. See, we're going back to the horror thing. We're leaving on a good horror note.
Yes.
For this week, because, boy, this year, it could have started considerably better. Not even mentioning the computer I lost to a power strike. Thank you.
Oh,
thank you.
Fun.
I appreciate that, electric company, you bastards. So you know what? Since I didn't have that computer to watch anything on, I got out for a while and did something that I'm going to tell you to do, which is you should get out and go see a movie.
Captain, we're losing power in the warp engines.
I think we should be leaving now.
I'm going to go home and sleep with my wife.
And on that unusually harmonious bombshell, it is time to end.
I am very disappointed!
Man, we have a weird job.
It's shameful, but it's a living.
And like that, he's gone.
Darn, that's the end.